Alam niyo po, he earned a degree in philosophy at the University of the Philippines and also studied Bachelor of Laws in UP College of Law. He graduated Juris Doctor Magna Cum Laude in 1986 in Northern Illinois University where he studied law. And he is also the chairman of the longest-running free legal assistance group or tinatawag po nating FLAG, which represented journalists and activists in different administrations. Sa Twitter, mas kilala po natin siya bilang si Woke Lolo. He is a lawyer, educator, and human rights advocate. I'm so happy to have with us Attorney Chel Diokno. Hi po, Attorney.
Hi, Toni. Thank you for having me.
Saan po kayo pinanganak, Attorney?
Dito sa Pasay City. Way back in 1961. Hindi ka pa siguro napanganak, no?
So, dito po kayo pinanganak sa Pasay. Yung tatay niyo po, ang trabaho noon ay...
Abogado siya. And then later, nahalal siya na senador.
Opo.
And that's what he was doing when he was arrested in 1972. Actually, medyo may disconnect yung childhood ko eh. Kasi for the first 11 years of my life, I was a son of a senator. Siyempre, alam mo naman yung anak ng senador, may driver, may katulong, lahat mayroong kasama palagi.
So, parang privilege po. Ganun.
Yes.
Opo.
And yet, when he was arrested in 1972, 11 years old lang ako noon, talagang bumaliktad yung buhay ko. My dad was never charged with any crime or any case.
Opo.
Kaya that really affected me.
So, you were 11 years old when you witnessed that life-changing moment.
It's a moment I can never forget. Seeing
Nandun
him...
po ba kayo nun? Nung
Oo.
kinuha yung tatay nyo? Nakita nyo po?
I was supposed to be asleep kasi ang aking oras ng pagtutulog noon mga 9 o'clock. But it so happened that my siblings had friends over. Kaya I played hooky and stayed up.
Opo.
Tapos naalala ko yung isang friend ng sister ko, sabi niya, lalabas muna ako, bibili lang ako ng yosi. But immediately he came back, tapos talagang namumutla siya. And my sister said, ano nangyari? Bakit ka bumalik agad? And he said, maraming sundalo sa labas. And so my sister and I went upstairs, we knocked on my parents' door. By that time, they knew kasi narinig nila sa bintana na maraming kotseng dumarating. And when we went down, I remember the colonel who met us at the door. Sabi niya sa dad ko, Sir, we are inviting you to the military camp. Sabi naman ng father ko, is this an invitation I can refuse? And the colonel was a bit, medyo, hindi naman siya, he looked a bit apologetic at sabi niya, I'm sorry sir, you have to come with us.
Nasaan po kayo nun? Pinapanood nyo po yung nangyayari?
Nandun kami, mismo sa front door.
Ano po nararamdaman nyo nung dumating yung mga sundalo sa bahay?
It was a big trauma kasi never ako nakakita ng ganong karaming sundalo tapos puro mahaba pa yung dala nilang baril. And never ko rin nakalain na huhulihin nila yung father ko kasi ang nasa isip ko, what did he do? And I remember falling asleep on the floor of our main door. Doon mismo sa sahig. Kasi hindi ko alam kung ibabalik ba siya the next day or kung ano pa mangyayari. Tapos ginigising ako ng mom ko 6 or 7 a.m. Sabi niya, magbihis ka, pupunta tayo ng Fort Bonifacio. So we thought we would get to visit him that day. Pero kaway lang, dumaan lang yung bus kasama ng ibang mga nahuli noon. And that was the first time I saw him as a prisoner. For the next 2 years, ganun ang ano namin, ang
So
buhay
from
namin.
looking at your father as your hero to seeing him as a prisoner, how did that affect you po when you were
That was
a
really a traumatic experience for me. And it led me to question everything.
like?
Like about justice, about the system that was happening in the country, and about why they had to take him away from us. Kaya during the entire time na nakakulong siya, ang dami namin naramdaman na emotions. Siyempre, nandyan yung galit, nandyan yung frustration, kasi araw-araw inaasahan mong marirelease siya, hindi naman pala nangyayari. But it was really my dad who grounded us. I remember one time sabi niya, don't take this personally.
Kanino po kayo nagalit nun?
Siyempre, sa lahat ng may kasalanan, may responsibility doon. Of course, that included the people in Malacanang who were in control of the government at that time.
So, nung bata po kayo, na-witness niyo yun and it parang somehow shaped you and molded you. Kasi di ba pag nakaka-experience po ang isang bata na parang nagmamature sila agad, nagkakaroon sila ng maagang realization about life, about reality, hindi ho ba?
Definitely. You know, I was really an introvert when I was a child. Mas mahilig ako magbasa kaysa sa, lumabas na kasama yung mga kaibigan. But that was a game changer for me. And naging decision ko noon, siguro mga 12 years old lang ako noon, sabi ko, I want to be a lawyer like my father. So when he was released in 1974, he really turned his back on politics. Hindi na siya nakialam sa politika. He dedicated his life to helping people in their legal cases. And I learned so much from him as a lawyer and as a person. Kasi
As a lawyer po, ano yung pinakamalaking natutunan niyo mula sa ama niyo?
Ay, grabe yung kanyang dedication, yung kanyang integrity, and his meticulousness. Ibang klase maghanda ng kaso yung dad ko. Kung kailangan na hindi siya matulog, hindi siya matutulog. I recall one time he was asked by, I think it was Senator Sergio Osmeña, how many hours do you prepare for court? Ang sabi ng dad ko, for every hour I'm inside the courtroom, I prepare 10 hours. Ganon katindi yung preparation niya. And that's what I tell my students in the College of Law. That akala nyo mahirap mag-aral ng law, pero actually yung buong buhay mo bilang abogado, pag-aaral yon until the last day that you practice.
I feel like yung pag-aaral ng law at pagiging abogado, hindi siya profession, it's a calling.
I think so. You know, it was really a study in contrast because when I was growing up, as a child, yung pupunta sa bahay namin, mga malalaking tao, you know, yung malalaking kotse, congressman, ganon. Pero nung na-release na yung dad ko, 1974, iba na yung mga pupunta sa bahay. Yung mga pupunta sa bahay, nakatsinelas na lang, mga manggagawa, mga aktivista, mga madre, mga pare. And I really, talagang namulat yung pag-iisip ko noon.
Namulat kayo sa?
Well, number one, the real conditions of our country. Kasi as a child of a senator, medyo may blinders ka eh. But when my father was released from prison and he met a lot of people who asked him for help, doon ko na-realize na grabe pala ang pagkukulang ng justice sa atin. Wala na akong ibang naisip na pag-aralan kundi ang law ever since I was young. So it was just natural for me to go into law after I finished my undergrad. And my dad was the one, naka-enroll na nga ako sa UP College of Law, pero sabi ng dad ko, it might be better if you learn your law in a place where they really teach it well. So I continued my studies in the US and then came home after I finished.
Came home as magna cum laude.
Hindi ko rin inaasahan yun na I would get those kinds of awards in law school.
So how does it feel po to go home with that kind of achievement na nagawa niyo po para sa inyong sarili?
Oh, I was so excited and I really wanted to start my practice already. Ang dream ko sana ay makapagsama ako sa dad ko sa law office niya. But by the time I came home, unfortunately, he was very sick with cancer already. And I only got to spend a few months with him. He was bedridden already at that time until he eventually passed on.
After po, you graduated ng Juris
Yes.
Doctor magna cum laude. So, naabutan niyo po yung father niyo, kaya lang he was very sick.
Naabot niya yung aking graduation sa States. So
He was so
a
proud
very
siguro
happy
po.
memory. Niloloko nga niya ako noon eh. Sabi niya, hindi ka naman magna cum laude, magna cum lucky ka lang. Sabi niya ganun. But I could see that he was proud that I had that achievement.
So what was your dream po growing up?
My dream really was to be a human rights lawyer. It sounds a bit melodramatic, but wala naman sa ambisyon ko yung maging super mayaman na abogado o kaya maging any kind of superstar lawyer. I just wanted to continue what he was doing. So, although I've had also paying clients over the years, I have also had a lot of human rights victims as my clients. And it's opened up a whole new world as far as what happens in our country. So for example, issues ng urban poor. Siyempre, if from the outside, it's easy to simplify their problem. Pero pag nakausap mo na sila and you realize that kaya lang naman sila lumuwas at pumunta dito sa atin is they just want a better life. Yun lang naman ang habol nila eh. Kaya lang, hindi nila na-realize na pagdating dito, problema pala yung bahay, problema pala yung kita. And so they end up as informal settlers. We cannot blame. Kasi yun ang problema minsan sa atin eh. Na prati tayo naghahanap ng reason to na pagbintangan yung iba. Pero pag inintindi natin sila, I think it's a more open and understanding approach.
Ano po yung isang kaso na hinawakan ninyo na memorable para sa inyo?
Yung una kong naalalang kaso, yung kaso ng Kuratong Balileng. Kasi
Opo.
one of the first times na humarap ako sa media noon. Hindi pa ako sanay sa media noon. That was also the first case where I ever got a death threat. So, memorable sa akin yon.
Natakot po kayo sa death threat?
Nag-ingat lang. And since that time, sa dami na ng mga death threats ko, parang I just take the necessary precautions.
So, sanay na po kayo sa death threats?
Medyo.
Parang pag ino-observe ko po kayo, parang napakakalma niyo pong tao. Parang hindi po kayo nagagalit kung paano po kayo magsalita. Ano po nakakagalit sa inyo?
I've realized that anger is an emotion that we all have to learn how to deal with. Ayun, natutunan ko rin yun sa dad ko. So I remember there was a time, nung bata ako, nanonood kami ng basketball game
Opo.
ng team namin sa Intervillage. Tapos, inis na inis ako sa referee kasi ang tingin ko parang unfair yung mga calls niya. Lahat ng tawag niya para dun sa kabilang team. So medyo nagagalit na ako. Until he was watching also and he quietly just approached me and said, huwag ka na magalit dyan. Kasi ganyan ang buhay. Things happen and you have no control over that. You have control over how you will respond to the situation. And I never forgot that. Kasi sa akin, tama nga naman, I cannot stop any problems from happening to me in my life, but at least I can control how I respond to those problems. And that has made me realize that when you are so overcome with anger, it really destroys your reason.
So ngayon parang marunong po kayo mag-control somehow ng mga bagay
Try.
na nakakagalit sa inyo.
I try my best.
But what gets you po talaga?
I think it's the sense of injustice. Alam mo, malakas sa ating mga Pinoy yung sense of injustice na yan. And when I see something wrong being done, I cannot help but feel it in my gut eh. Kaya sa akin, that's also probably what fuels me as a lawyer, as a human rights advocate.
What's one thing na gusto nyo pong itama sa nakikita nyo sa society natin ngayon?
Definitely, it's our justice system. Kasi halos wala nang kumpiyansa ang tao sa sistema ng hustisya natin. For example, we have so much delay in our cases. May mga hawak akong kaso, umaabot ng 10 years, 20 years bago natatapos. And that kind of delay is simply not consistent with our concept of justice. Second, when I studied that issue, nalaman ko pala, kaya pala napakabagal ng kaso natin kasi kulang na kulang tayo ng judge. Yun lang pala yung problema. We have a 20% vacancy rate for judges. So if you think of a hospital, kulang siya ng doktor, araw-araw may pumapasok ng pasyente, it will not be able to sustain itself. And it's not only judges na kulang tayo, prosecutor din. 34% ng ating pwesto sa prosecution ay bakante rin. And if we could only address that one issue, we could solve so much of our justice system.
Sabi niyo po, sanay na kayo na makakuha ng mga death threats. Parang hindi na kayo somehow na natatakot sa mga ganyan dahil medyo alam niyo na kung paano i-handle. Paano po yung criticisms and attacks against you? How do you handle that po?
That I have also to make sure I am aware of how I respond to it. Actually, as a human rights lawyer, noon, hindi ko naman iniisip yun eh. Tsaka even if I would sometimes see the spotlight, hindi naman ganun ka-frequent yung bashing and so on. That is part of the territory.
Parang a big part of you is because of everything that you have witnessed sa inyong ama and malaki yung influence niya sa buhay niyo. Kayo naman po as a father, paano naman po kayo sa inyong mga anak?
Well, first of all, I have to say that it's not only my father but also my mom. My mom was like a rock, especially during the times that my father was in jail. We all relied on her for everything. And grabe ang tapang ng nanay ko. The same way my parents treated me is, I think, how I treated my children. Kasi my folks, they never looked down to us eh. Even when we were small, hindi naman ang trato sa amin, hindi naman parang bata lang eh. They respected the fact that we could think. And so, I tried to adopt the same approach with my children.
Tinanong po namin ang inyong mga anak kung how are you po as a father. Sabi po ni Pepe, the best way I could describe him is that he's the most chill dad. And he really allowed us to be who we are. And he even embraced me when I came out to him. Paano naman po yung relationship niyo with Pepe? Kasi sabi niya po, you allowed them to be who they really are.
To me, that's really the most important part of being a parent is having that connection and understanding your children and accepting them. I really value my relationship with my kids, with Pepe and Laya and Abe Ines and Julio and Ian. Kasi iba ang connection namin.
So when he came out po sa inyo, what did you tell him?
Well, first of all, I kind of knew already even before he talked to me about it. In fact, parang ang feeling ko rin is I also wanted to reach out to him, but I think we're both afraid kung ano yung magiging reaction, especially on his part. That's why when he spoke to me, I really went out of my way to assure him na okay lang yun, wala sa akin yun.
There's a letter that your daughter wrote, si Laya po.
Yes.
Ang ganda po ng kanyang sinulat. Sabi niya, dito sa kanyang letter sa inyo, Dear Dad, remember all those times I would go to you as a kid, angry and annoyed at the world, complaining about something that bothered me that day? I can no longer remember what I was angry about. All I can remember is you listening to me. Ang ganda po nun.
Yeah.
Kasi parang that's something na gustong maramdaman ng mga bata that they are being heard. So that's the kind of father you are. You listen to your kids. That's important to you. And this one also, she talked about how she started smoking.
Yes.
And then she said, I appreciated his advice while other friends got an earful from their parents and others have been hiding their lifestyle for years. I was not. I was given facts and opinions and I needed to decide for myself, for my life. This has been the way you have parented me all my life. You have never been the kind of parent that would show me the path and tell me what to do. You would show me 2 paths, or 3 or 5, and let me wander around. At times I felt I was leading a life without direction, but now I know I needed those years of feeling lost, because when I finally decided on a path, I knew it was what I wanted. And then she said, thank you, Dad. How does it feel po to hear those words from your kids?
Nakakataba ng puso talaga. It's so gratifying. And, you know, my daughter, si Laya, she's not a very open person when it comes to these things. So when I saw her, what she had written, I really felt so good.
What's the best thing po about having children?
Hey, it's the interaction for me. It's seeing them grow up. It's seeing how from a little seed they become a big tree. Every evening before they would go to sleep, gusto nila na may storya. Siyempre, magbabasa ka ng libro. Nung una, I would buy books. I would read the books to them. But after a while, medyo na-bored ako. Kasi sabi ko, parang predictable naman itong mga kwento na to. So one evening, I came up with my own story na may kinwento ko about a tree na ganito and people who live there. And they liked it. So the next day, they said, Dad, tuloy mo yung kwento mo. So I cannot remember how long a period of time, every night I would make up the next chapter of the story.
Anong story po yun? Anong title?
It's about a tree and people, it's a magical tree and people who would go there and the events that happened to them. Ang nakakatawa lang dun is the tree I pictured in my mind. Several years later, I came across a print from a magazine of a drawing of a tree na sabi ko, yan yung puno na iniisip ko. So actually, ginawa ko siyang frame.
What do you always tell your children po?
To experience everything and live life to the fullest.
Kayo po, if I were to ask you, what do you stand for in life?
Wow, that's a very tough question. I think I'd say that what I stand for is what, what is appropriate and what is right. When you look at our language, what word do we use for justice? We use katarungan. But the root word of katarungan is a Visayan word. Tarong ang root ng katarungan eh. And it really means what's appropriate, what's correct, what's upright. So for us, doing what is just is doing what's right. If you look at our word for human rights, karapatan, the root word is dapat. And it's the same. Di ba? Yung ibig sabihin ng dapat, yung ibig sabihin ng tarong, magkapareho lang yun eh.
What do you consider is important in life po?
To me, what's important in life is making sure that we respect our own and others' basic dignity. Kung minsan, nakakalimutan din natin yung sarili natin. Yung tinatawag nilang self-love ay importante din yon. It must begin with our own, how we look at ourselves.
Ano po ang gusto nyong maisip ng mga tao about you?
To me, pag sinabi kong ako po si Atty. Chel Diokno, mapapagmayabang ko na I stood up for my principles for my entire life and my entire professional career. And I will do so until the last breath that I make. And to me, that would be a great achievement. I would consider my life fulfilled if that is how people would look at me.